Here's what I came up with. If you have a look at the Cape Breton stick, just underneath it, can you see those fine splits? There's actually a little bit of a issue right there, so I'm trying to keep the Cape Breton stick above that line. You can see the Antigonish stick is pretty much to the edge. Let's have a look up here at the shafts. Not much wiggle room on this to get two decent pieces of it, and I'm a little worried about this Cape Breton stick. Might have a split in it. I'm going to have to go with this. It's the best I can do with it. See how I've nailed my template down with little nails? So when I go to trace it, it won't be wiggling all over the place and it won't move. That's a pretty good habit to get into with wooden templates. So I'm going to commit to this and we'll cut these out and see how it turns out. Here's the Cape Breton replica stick, and I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. I'm really quite happy with the curves. The top and bottom of the blade, they turned out really well. You'll hear boat builders talk about fairing a curve, and there's a number of ways to fair a curve. That is to take your rough sawn curve and improve it and get it as close to perfect as possible. It's important you get off to a good start. When you cut along a curved line, don't try to cut on the line. Cut about 1/8 of an inch on the waist side of the line and shape to the line later. And it doesn't matter if you're using a bandsaw or a jigsaw. In the old days, they would have used a compass saw to cut a curve like this, and compass saws still work. You don't need any fancy equipment to cut a curve like this on a hockey stick. You can sand down to your line later. I would caution you there that in my teaching career, I've seen a lot of good projects ruined by sanding. For one thing, it's very hard to control a curve with a sander unless you're experienced and have a lot of time in on it. And also, sanders will burn end grain, and it's very hard to get the burn marks out later on. What I use instead is just a plain file. This file's flat on one side and rounded on the other. When I'm filing a curve, I don't file at a 90 degrees to the curve. I put as much angle as I can on this file. When I feel this right now, I feel a series of hills and valleys, and when you put it at an angle like this, the advancing part of the file rides over the hills. It doesn't drop into the valley. You could be filing a long, long time, and all you're doing is following those hills and valleys. This way, it only cuts into the hills, and it doesn't land in the valleys until you're finished, until your curve is fair. And it's just a few minutes of work, flat side of the file, down. Now to file the inside of the curve, just reverse your file, curve side down. Same thing though, the hills and valleys are there, as much angle as you can on that sweep. And just keep working it for a few minutes and you'll be amazed at the results. So it's time for me to get busy and fair this curve.